Welcome to The River's Edge. Today I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Dr. Matt James. He's a master practitioner of NLP and president of the Empowership Partnership, which is a international company dedicated to personal transformation. You have authored several books and trained thousands of students every year in the mastery of the 4 bodies of empowerment, which we're going to get into what those are. And you weave effective modern technologies with ancient spiritual wisdom, which I love, that you combine both of them, create your own path to success. So thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you. You left out one really important part of the bio. I'm a big Steelers fan, so appreciate you wearing the cap. And if that broke rapport with anybody, I figured they wouldn't be on your show if they know that you're a Steelers fan anyway, so it's all good.
Of course. Thank you for coming. So I want to ask you, so today I'm going to talk about what is NLP, who would use it, and the Empowerment Partnership, your company, and then also talk about some current events.
Absolutely.
So first, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say NLP is actually really simple to describe, although even people who have been in the field as long as I have sometimes have difficulty explaining it. It stands for neuro-linguistic programming, and it's kind of a fancy way of saying studying how language, how communication affects the mind. And because it affects the mind, it affects the body, the whole mind, body, spirit thing. And it was invented back in the 70s. I was trained in it in the 80s when I was a kid, began teaching 22 years ago this year. I wrapped up 22 years of teaching. And really, I can summarize it in a nutshell. It's the study of how successful people get results. So how does a successful coach get results? NLP takes a look at that and goes, okay, however they do it, we can pull that strategy out and learn how to do it ourselves. In other words, emulating or modeling what other people do to achieve a specific result in life. That's NLP in a nutshell.
Just so you guys know, I did go to NLP class, to his class. He wasn't teaching, but we had other teachers there in LA last weekend. So, and I didn't know anything about it, and I've heard of it before, but I didn't know really anything. And then someone suggested I go. So I'm like, oh, I'll go. I'd like to learn anything about human behavior and psychology. So super interesting. Yeah, enjoyed it. But so do you think that works out for applying the same model to, because everyone's so different, right? We're motivated by different factors and
I think that motivation is different for each individual. So one of the things that you learn with neuro-linguistic programming is to separate the strategy, the process that someone uses from the motivation. The motivation is important. I'm always wanting to find out, what is your motivation to doing something? It's like, no one ever asks me, how have you been motivated to be in the same field for 38 years and teaching for 22? And when people do ask me, I mean, I rarely get asked that, but when someone does come up to me in a training, and I always find it curious because they must have some level of focus that's different than other individuals, because most people just want to know, what did you do? The steps to get there. So NLP looks at both. What are the steps that you use to get to a specific result? And also, what is the motivation? Because you do want to emulate both of those, but you're right. Each individual has a different motivation, and yet there are some fundamental aspects about how successful people think. Successful people think a certain way. They talk a certain way. They operate a certain way. And so NLP says, let's look at a successful individual. Like, how are they navigating a situation like what's going on right now? What's the difference between someone who is navigating everything going on during COVID versus someone who's not navigating it? And NLP would simply say, find the people that are still successful and pay attention to what they do, model what they do, and then follow that path, as opposed to just haphazardly trying to figure it out on your own.
And you do go into reprogramming your subconscious, right? And learning what those limiting beliefs are. If you get deep into those areas.
Absolutely. In fact, the word programming, right? Neurology, linguistics is how you communicate internally and externally. Mm-hmm. And then programming, because it was created in the 70s. And so computer programming had become very popular. And it was the idea that we can program ourselves or deprogram ourselves. And cognitive psychology now uses the word programming. I'm a doctor of integrative psychology, and that's a fancy way of saying I study the mind body, how the mind affects the physical body. And it's currently estimated that we're about 95% programmed to be who we are today by the time we're age 5, somewhere between 3 and 5. You got a good 95% of your programming in there, which for some people, they sit there and they go, that's horrible. I have very little hope because of that. In actuality, people can change, people can shift, people can change. And the current studies that are coming out on human behavior, on the mind-body connection, they all show that an individual can improve over time, that an intelligent person has to work at being intelligent. A fit person has to work at being fit. A person who wants to have a healthy relationship has to work at having that healthy relationship.
Yes, very, very true. And it can be challenging though to change your beliefs. Don't you think that do you still work on limiting beliefs that you are challenging?
I think, I was teaching in Brisbane, Australia. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And I got on stage and a few people asked me about that. And I said, sure, no matter how far down the path you go, you can always face challenges. Someone wrote on a 3x5 card, because some people don't want to ask questions in front of the entire group. So we give them 3x5 cards to write their questions down. And one person wrote on the 3x5 card, well, if you've been doing NLP since you were 11 and you still have limiting beliefs, what hope does anyone else have? And I kind of smiled and went, I think you're missing a point. As long as the world keeps on changing, which it seems to do, you have the opportunity to run into a limiting belief or a limitation. If you just chunk up a limitation, so a conflict. I felt like I've dealt with a whole bunch of limiting beliefs, and then all of a sudden you have the whole world shut down and not able to get into Canada anymore. You find an opportunity to adjust new beliefs.
Yeah, so I figure you have, like, whenever things come up, you have the tools to address it right away, whereas a limiting belief isn't going to stagnate you. You're not going to be crippled from it, right? Because you have the tools to work through it.
That's correct. And I think that's the biggest thing that differentiates my company, the Empowerment Partnership. One of the big things is that rather than just talking about it, Kelly, as you got to experience there in the training, it's okay, here's some information, here's a demonstration of it, and let's jump into exercise so that you can have an experience of it as well. Whether it's getting rid of an unwanted state or behavior, whether it is shifting your state, an emotional state that you're in, or even getting rid of a conflict. And what was heights, their fear of heights. We had a person who had an extreme fear of heights at the end. She went up the elevator. We all went out and watched her in that glass elevator. It was really fun.
I know, that was funny because I was with her in the elevator that morning before the exercise.
And were you?
Yeah, we just happened to get on the elevator together, and she would not stand by the glass. She's standing by the door, and then she was telling me about it later. And then she happened to get up and do the exercise, so it was funny.
That's awesome. You got to actually witness it. Yeah, it's crazy. The world out there believes that letting go of baggage is the difficult part. In actuality, the current research that's coming out shows that letting go of the baggage is the easy part. Actually, it's setting a clear direction. It's taking action and maintaining your focus while you're taking action. Those are actually the steps that people need a lot of work with. Releasing baggage. I wrote a book, my fourth book, called Mental and Emotional Release. And in it, I talk about a tool that comes from our school that helps people let go of negative emotions, limiting beliefs. And the studies that were done, we've had clinical research done on it, academic research. We have hundreds of case studies at this point. And it's in the book. It's in the book, Mental and Emotional Release. So people who, I get way more clinicians now coming in, medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. I have individuals that really are tired of not getting results because there are very few tools that are out there that are effective. And I'm seeing a lot more people that are coaches and in mental health because they want tangible tools. They want the tools to be able to get rid of their baggage.
For sure. And a lot of people are scared to look within, right? They're really scared to look at their baggage, their trauma.
They are. It does. Yeah, it takes courage, Kelly. You're right. It takes courage to take a look at your baggage and to go, okay, this is something that I need to face for all of us, for me too. To be able to say to you, I said to my team as we were ramping back up in May, after having 2.5 months of downtime because of COVID, we got going again. And I got on a Zoom meeting with my entire team and said to them, we have to go in focused and dialed in because our limiting beliefs will transfer over to the students. And I believe that we're going to get the best students we've ever had. We're going to get people that want to be there at live trainings, and our numbers are going to be lower, but they're going to be the best of the best. And it has been nonstop since May.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me about the empowerment company, when did you start it, and when did you become president and everything?
Well, we started off in 1982, and that wasn't me. I was 11. And so I would have had a hard time starting up a business at that age, although that'd be a cool backstory.
You doing NLP at 11.
I did do NLP at 11. What happened was my dad opened up a company for business consulting to help people do better in business. And he went and took an NLP training to get better at doing the business consulting and fell in love with it. And I did a master practitioner training with the person who invented NLP back in 80, I think it was 85, no, 86, 85, 86. And my dad began teaching it right around that time as well. I became a part of the company in 92 and the owner in 2001, and really began teaching in the late 90s. And having been in this field my entire life, when I went back to school to become a doctor, I took off the glasses, the NLP personal growth glasses. And I was like, all right, if there's something better out there, if there's a better approach to mental and emotional health, if there is a better approach to achieving the results you want in life, I'm all for it. Because at the end of the day, the mission of our company is to help people empower themselves. And I want to work with the best tools. I learned NLP in the 80s, and it was very different in the 80s than it is in the 90s. And some people still teach old school NLP. What it takes to be successful today is very different. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about 21st century. You look at what execs are doing in the top companies, whether it's small companies, large companies, and what they have to do now to be successful is very different than what they had to do before. And so I like to say that we as a company continue to look outside and go, what does it take to be successful and get results in this day and age? And I like to say we teach 21st century NLP, always revising and improving what we do.
You are the one that makes the modifications and upgrades and changes?
Yeah, I have a team. As you got to see, you met, how many other trainers did we have there? We had 3. Yeah, Deanne wasn't there. So you got to meet 3 of my 4 trainers. And I got a team of trainers that help out with it. Yeah, I've been running the company and leading it since 1997. So
it's just you and the 4 trainers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you guys are busy then. I thought you had a lot more trainers because you're always on the road training, right?
Yes. I have 2 kids, and both of them are like, everyone's going to Zoom now, Dad. You could go to Zoom and just live at home with us. And actually, I have a great connection with both my kids. I'm on my way to go be with them, and have a great connection with them and an amazing relationship. And both of them have done NLP. They grew up in a household of.
Are they masters too?
My son.
You tell me about your son, Ethan. I said, is he a master?
Yeah, he is. He did practitioner. I think the first event that he ever asked to go to, he was 10 years old. And he's done every level of Huna, the more spiritual stuff that we teach, the energy work and whatnot. And he did practitioner, master practitioner, and he also did trainer training, and credits it to really helping him navigate high school and especially college, where you do a lot of presentations, where you have to do a lot of communication. And pardon me, he's going to University of San Diego. And in University of San Diego's business school, they're teaching NLP. They're teaching eye accessing patterns. They're teaching a lot. It was funny. He sent me a screenshot of the Zoom and he goes, look, Dad, look what we're covering today. He's like, I'm thinking I'm going to do okay in this section. And I laughed.
Oh,
Skylar also, my daughter has done practitioner level, master practitioner level, and the first week of trainers training. And her report card just came in, and she has a public speaking class. And the teacher said, he's an excellent presenter. And my ex, she sent me the report card and she said, did you expect anything less? And I was like, no, I guess not.
I love it. That is funny. Wow. How old are your kids?
My daughter's 14 and my son is 21.
Okay. Wow, it's a big age gap between the 2.
Yeah, took a break. I like sleep.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I love that though, that you teach the kids how to be confident and how to realize their limiting beliefs right off the bat, so they don't go through life thinking they are their thoughts, that they're crazy.
A lot of people do. Yeah, you're right. I love what you just said. A lot of people do. They get these thoughts or these ideas that they are the things that they think about. I remember Ethan, when he started boarding in school, he called me up and he said, I have so many friends that weekend after weekend complain about the exact same thing. And he's like, I want to do some NLP techniques with them because they're so caught up in their baggage. They actually identify with their baggage. Like, I am the baggage, as opposed to going, I have baggage. And that can be a real problem. That can be a real problem for individuals.
Yeah, if you don't have any tools. So when did your dad taught you, how old were you when you first learned?
I did my first intro event when I was 11. I think I became a practitioner at 13 and a master practitioner at, it was either 15 or 16, right around that time, mid 80s.
Right, to be a master practitioner. It's just crazy to me that I love it though. I love it. And I read that you were meditating at age 5, which is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, my father and my mom were just into this type of stuff, and I asked for it. I gravitated towards it from the time that I was a young kid. I love these teachings. I love these tools.
Yeah, so you've had these tools your whole life pretty much then.
Yeah.
So awesome. So let's talk about the Empowerment Power Partnership we did talk about at your training around the world training, right?
Yep.
You and your 4 trainers, you guys are going a lot. I get what you this year.
Oh yeah, yeah. We travel a lot.
Wow. So I'm going to talk about current events and how people because people, as you know, have been living in fear this year. They're crazy fear, and it's not good for their health at all, and their mental, and they buy in. First of all, I have a question. Do you think there is a pandemic?
Well, first of all, the answer is yes. I'm a doctor of psychology. I specifically studied the mind-body connection and had to study immunology, psychoneuroimmunology, biology. COVID is a virus, but I just want to make sure that I'm really clear. The flu is also a pandemic, and the cold is a pandemic. The word pandemic means that there is a virus or a illness that hits an entire country. And by the very fact that we have a flu season, the flu is a pandemic, just to be really clear. So the word pandemic is being used, and a lot of people haven't heard it used before because we don't refer to the flu as a pandemic. And technically it is. I mean, you can just Google, what does pandemic mean? So when someone says, is the coronavirus real? Is the flu, is the coronavirus real? Is it a pandemic? The answer is yes. And I actually have a client who got sick from it, and he didn't sound good. His exact words were that he's had a worse flu, he had pneumonia, and he would much rather have gone through COVID than any of those things. He's more worried about the stigma at this point than the illness itself.
In September. The only difference was I got super dizzy for a whole week and super nauseous the whole time.
Yeah.
That felt like a head cold.
For many people, it's that way. And I'm saying this with a lot of love and respect because I do have people that were directly affected by it. One of my closest friends growing up, she's a charge nurse at a major hospital. She got COVID. She actually knows a couple of people that passed away because of complications with COVID. And so my heart goes out to anyone for whom the illness has affected them, not just physically, but with their economy, with everything they have going on. I know a lot of business owners that there are some in states that the states are shutting down again, and they're like, I got to stay open. I got no choice. And as a doctor of psychology, I've also looked at the research on how suicide rates are through the roof, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. It's just alarming at those rates, and the fact that we're not doing anything really about that. We're just focusing in on the virus itself. And that's unfortunate because there are a lot of people that need help beyond just the virus.
The flu virus.
Your volume is cutting out. I wasn't able to hear the question.
Oh, okay. I said, do you think we'll ever get rid of COVID? Because we don't get rid of the flu here. I mean, if we could get rid of it, it would have been a long time ago, right?
Yeah, see, I brought that up on a recent webinar that I did specifically on COVID. And I said, a lot of people are throwing around the idea if we had just shut the country down, or, if we just shut everything down, that it would somehow go away. Here's the thing. COVID's been around for a few hundred years. They've been studying it in labs at the CDC since the 60s. Thinking you could get rid of COVID is like thinking we can get rid of the flu. There is no getting rid of the flu. Both the flu and COVID are a single strand RNA sequenced virus. COVID has positive antigens and the flu has negative antigens. So COVID is like the flu's angry cousin. It's very similar. And the people that I talk to that are immunologists, that are doctors, they're like, we're not going to get rid of it. And a vaccine isn't like a polio vaccine where you're going to be able to just do it once and you're done of it. It's going to become seasonal. Many people that are looking at it from an immunology perspective, 102 years ago, we had influenza, the Spanish flu. It freaked everyone out. People wore masks. They shut down businesses. They social distanced. They believed nothing would ever be the same again. And wow, all of a sudden we get to the 60s and everyone's touching each other again. No one's worried about the flu because the flu becomes a common thing. And so a lot of people that I talk to from an immunology perspective, they're just looking at the fact that it's going to be here. It's going to be here. We're hoping to build up immunity to it, have some sort of, a shot that you can take to boost your immune system, whether you believe in it or not. And at the end of the day, it's going to probably end up being like the flu. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict that 100%. Everyone that I've talked to and my own research and being a doctor looking at this, we're kind of going to be stuck with it. We're going to have a COVID season probably. We'll call it a SARS season because COVID was actually SARS, which we saw a few years back. It was MERS, which we saw a few years back. So COVID hasn't gone away. The likelihood of it going away is pretty slim.
I concur. I'm not going to wear a mask the rest of our life, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, and the mask, there's mixed opinions on the mask. There's mixed studies that show that the mask is effective. Most people don't put on the mask properly and therefore rendering it to be basically ineffective. In fact, there are some studies that show that if you're not properly trained to put on the mask actually increases the likelihood of COVID. Because if you've been using antibacterial soap and your hands are dry, COVID hides in the cracks of your hands. All you do is touch the mask the wrong way once and you put it on your face, you actually increase your risk of exposure. So any study that shows that the mask helps, that study is usually done with people who know how to put it on properly. When they first made masks mandatory, I pulled into a Whole Foods and the person next to me took their mask off the rearview mirror, wiped it clean and put it on their face. And I went, that's actually not a good idea. Surgeons scrub and everything under their nails and hold their hands up and then they get masked up. So. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I doubt anyone's wearing it the correct way. You can see it in people's cars. It's just lying on the floorboard or the middle section.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
They're all very dirty. I just wanted your input on that and how people can, any tips you can give them in this video to reduce their fear.
Yeah. Absolutely. First of all, one of the things that I would do is, and I share this with my students, I share this with my clients, even with my kids, it's educate yourself. And, I asked Skylar, my daughter, she's 14. I said, Skylar, has the media ever blown something out of proportion? And as a 14-year-old, she went, yes. I went, okay. So if you understand what the coronavirus is, what COVID is, if you understand it and you eat healthy and you get lots of rest and you stay in a calm, centered, and balanced state, if you do get it, you're going to bounce back rapidly. It's the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, S stands for stress, parasympathetic, P stands for peace. In the sympathetic nervous system, you're in fight or flight and your immune system has no energy. It has no energy. It has no resources from your body. And that's old school programming from back in the, when we were living in caves and there's a bear outside, you got to pop into fight or flight. Parasympathetic is when you're chilling out, you're resting, rest and digest, and you're nice, calm, and balanced. And the issue is you have no control over it. If you are stressed out, you're in sympathetic nervous system. Your body chooses that over parasympathetic because an attack externally, like a bear, is more dangerous than an internal threat like the flu. So people are putting themselves into sympathetic nervous system by watching the media, by listening to the news. And I've had people say to me, but if I don't, what if something happens? Someone will tell you. Someone will always tell you. Back in the 90s, I would recommend to people, if you want to stay in a stressed out environment, keep watching the news. It's one thing that we can all control. So now So having said that, if you're able to watch the news and navigate it without getting stressed out, then watch the news. But if you find yourself in a stressed out fight or flight response, what's going to happen if you get any illness, a cold, a flu, any virus? If you're in sympathetic nervous system, it is going to kick you in the butt. It's going to put you in bed and cause you to stay there for an extended period of time. So whatever you can do, meditation, doing release work, like the book that I have, Mental and Emotional Release, techniques like Ho'oponopono on forgiveness, anything to calm you down is what's really important right now in the situation that we have going on.
I love that. It's number one. Just look at that.
Yeah.
It's so critical. Preach here everywhere. I wanted to ask you about Hawaii real quick. You were born and raised in Hawaii?
I moved there when I was 1, so locals forgive me. My father moved there when I was very young, and so yes, I was raised there, pretty much local, and grew up there. And since COVID, I have only been home once though. Usually, that's my residence. That's where I'm from. Both my kids are born there.
You don't live there now?
Oh no, I do. I just, because of COVID, I have had very little time. Our trainings are usually like extended, where you get breaks in between. And because of COVID, everything got condensed. And so I've pretty much literally been on the road since May. So when people say, where do you live? I'm an Airbnb expert at this point.
Oh, are you still married?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not because of this.
Oh, no, not because of this. It's been a while. But had nothing to do with this.
Your wife's going to leave you if you don't ever go home again.
That would be true. If I was married right now, I'd definitely be in trouble.
Be gone all the time. That's a rough life.
Yeah, you know what though? I've had people say that, and yet one day, Kelly, if you come to a master practitioner training and my kids are there, you'll get to meet them. I had people go, "Oh my God, aren't you afraid?" Actually, I get 6 weeks off right now. I'm going to go hang out with my kids for 6 straight weeks, where literally I just do a little bit of coaching, finish writing my 6th book, and for the most part, just sit around with my kids. So I prefer quality over quantity, and I get that in my life, which I'm very blessed.
Which island are you on?
Big Island.
Okay. Yeah, I was just in Kona last year, the year before. I stayed at the Hilton up there.
Oh yeah.
That's so nice. I like it. I never did get to see the Loga though. I never got there. I never made it over there. I wanted to do that.
Yeah, it's worth seeing for sure. It definitely is.
All right. Well, I think I got all my questions. Oh, one last thing, your opinion on the election. What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, geez. But didn't mom tell you not to ask political stuff? What do I think is going to happen?
I thought you were a fortune teller. You could see the future. That's going to
No, I left my crystal ball in the other room. I left my crystal ball over there. I have people ask me that. I have one client who believes that everything that the media is telling you is a lie and it's going to be overturned. I have another client that is relieved and like everything's going to be back to normal and peaceful. And I've heard every conspiracy you can think of.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, who knows?
Here's what I know. Having been a teacher through, I don't know how many, I've been teaching since the late 90s. I think this is my, 22 years, presidential elections, 7? I think I've been teaching through 7 presidential elections. Here's what I know. No matter who's in office, you're in charge of your own happiness. You hear all the time that the world's going to end, whoever gets into office. And what I found is that at the end of the day, you're in charge of your happiness. You're in charge of your results. And it doesn't matter who's living in what color house, in what state, you get to be in charge of you. I vote. I'm very active with talking to my kids about making informed decisions when it comes to politics and, listening to the debates and whatnot. And I'm a big believer in that you don't get to have a complaint unless you vote. I voted. I took a picture of it on my Instagram, in fact, just because I like to make that point. I have been voting ever since I possibly could when I was a kid. And what I've noticed is that you always have people that say, if so-and-so gets into office, the world's going to end, and the world still hasn't ended yet. So I no longer listen to that. I no longer believe in that. What I believe in is at the end of the day, I'm in charge of me. That's it.
Right? Anytime you're letting the external world and rock your internal ears, you're screwed. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Very true. Very true.
Thanks for coming on and sharing your wisdom and helping people out along the way. I love it.
I appreciate you having me on, and I hope you have some happy holidays.
Yeah, you too. Go enjoy Hawaii. Go enjoy those 6 weeks off. I love it.
Yeah, I will. Definitely.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye-bye.